This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Summit, 2 days that would change your life forever. For tickets, go to thewellnesssummit.com. TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cyndi O'Mara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. And I'm Karen Smith. So welcome back. You've just joined us for part 2 of the amazing interview with Stephen, the guy who works for Cyndi, working on her project of bringing us, what should we say, the most spectacular nutrition course that ever there was. So we're really, really excited to continue the conversation with him. So again, sit back, relax, and get ready to dive deep into all things health, nutrition, and science.
How did you find yourself ending up now working with Cyndi O'Mara?
So I didn't answer that question,
No.
did I? So I was at the Federation University, and Sue and I, my partner, so we decided that we really wanted to move back. We're from the Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast area. We really wanted to come back home, and the contract down there was for 2 years, and there was option for me to stay on. They wanted me to stay on, and they offered me, a further contract down there. But we just wanted to. We got to a sort of point in our life where we thought, we really want to just move back to the coast, and we're sort of established in our careers, so I think it won't be a problem. And I have contacts in Brisbane that...
What does Sue do, just out of interest?
Oh, okay.
Just wondering what your dinner time conversation is.
I know. Cyndi asked me this question. Yeah. Sue, she is a microbiologist. She did her PhD in microbiology. She studied at Harvard for a while, and she went to Ghent in Belgium to do a postdoctoral fellowship for a year, but she hates research. So she got out of research altogether, and now she's involved in higher degree education. So she looks after higher degree research students and takes them through their life cycle of their course.
I know when Danny and I have conversations sometimes, and the things that come out of his mouth, I realise are based on his personality, because that's an area that I'm interested in. I know. Yeah. But you guys would be looking at each other on a cellular level, wouldn't you?
It's funny. Our conversations.
Which of those 25,000 are switching on right now, sweetheart?
Our conversations at the moment. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's bringing up this kind of image. I know.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be just a conversation of, you irritated me. It would be like, okay, when, what time, how, what occurred
what
on
molecular interaction. Maybe I can find a drug or something.
Maybe that's how drugs started. Men and wives nagging each other. We don't know.
Yeah, our conversation at the moment's been very much stuff that Cyndi and I have been talking about. We've been talking a lot about leptin and insulin resistance, and I'm really hooked
as you're eating a donut.
Yeah.
No, having a glass of wine. He drinks wine.
I drink wine. Having a glass of wine. Like last night, and
that will change.
Yeah.
That too will change.
So long you can have wine. It's fermented food.
Yeah, it's good for, and it's got antioxidants.
Without
in
2,2-0 in it, you're fine.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's right. And what was that?
We were talking about your dinner conversation.
Yeah. So at the moment, we've been talking a lot about evolution of, our diets and things like that, through the hunters and gatherers, through to whether our genome has really changed. So there's the idea that since the advent of the agricultural evolution 10,000 years ago, we haven't really changed, and our genome hasn't changed that much. So we kind of, the genes we have from our ancestors, we're sort of ill-suited to this environment for. So that's why we're seeing a lot of these diseases, these metabolic diseases such as obesity, diabetes and things like that. But I sort of also think that to some context that's probably true, but we are changing. There is a lot of evidence that our genome has changed since the advent of the from the agricultural evolution through epigenetics. And epigenetics is obviously been going on since year dot. And
just one quick question. Is a metabolic disease in the same category as an autoimmune disease, or are they different? Or?
They can be. So they can. Autoimmune disease is a little bit different from it's all metabolism. Okay. So, but the main metabolic diseases are really your diseases associated with fatty liver, lifestyle, type 2 diabetes, obesity, fatty liver, high cholesterol, all that sort of association. That's really the metabolic diseases. But autoimmune diseases also fit into that because they interact with metabolic disease. They are metabolic as well. Yeah, exactly.
And we've had an
but
they're not
really classed as. They don't really fit under that umbrella just yet, but I mean they probably will.
They may,
So you've been talking a lot about the progress of us in evolution.
Yeah, just really in understanding, our particular nutrients that we ate back in the hunter-gatherers days to now, and whether they're impacting on our health, the new foods that we're having, and whether our genomes are changing to adapt to these particular changes in nutrients. So that's what I'm looking at the moment, and I'm trying to understand. And there's a lot of evidence that we are evolving, and we have evolved since the agricultural revolution. And, for example, a classic one is that eco-populations that are in certain eco-climates that rely on agriculture as their main food source, they have higher levels or higher copy numbers of the amylase gene. So they find that amylase is increased in those populations to break down carbohydrates. You look also at populations that use a lot of herding, for example, or milking, and they rely on milk. They'll have increases in their levels of lactose. Their lactase gene, which is an enzyme. The really interesting one I was reading about yesterday is salt tolerance. As we move away from the equator, from Africa, and move up into Europe and away from the equator, our genes involved in salt tolerance change. And there's mutations in our genes. There's a CYP3A5 gene, which is genes that are expressed they're made in the liver, and they're involved in getting rid of toxins in the liver. They're involved in other things as well, involved in metabolism. But we find that if you look at the population of Africa, and as it's moved out through evolutionary time, and just even in recent times, there's mutations in that gene that are precursors for intolerance of salt and involved in water and salt balance.
Oh my God.
So we find that as we move across the globe into different eco-climates, we're getting changes in our genome, and this is occurring at a fast rate.
Is that then when problems... We're such a multicultural society now. We have Africans living in Australia. We have Kiwis living in
Australia. Australia.
There's 8,000 Kiwi passports. And there's 8 million Kiwi passports. There's only 4 million in the population.
They've all moved out.
We're conquering the world. This is epigenetics at its best. Do you see then why there's problems with people with different... And the other question, and that was one question. The other question was, you were talking about that the high agricultural societies and how they've developed genes to account for the breakdown of carbohydrates. What about our society that's so high in processed foods? Does that gene occur in these processed and modern countries as well? Or?
Yeah, there's... That's interesting.
You're amazing, your questions.
That's interesting because there are studies that have shown we have epigenetic changes in nutrients that are occurring, basically really quickly in society based on not so much refined food, but the different foods that we have in our systems now, in our food system now, we're finding that they respond differently to epigenetic changes. So different nutrients will respond differently, but it'll also be due to ethnicity as well. So we have different responses in our food depending on our creed and our colour, as well as those responses in these new nutrients that we're introducing into our lifestyle are also affecting our epigenetics. And there's a lot of pretty convincing data out there to show that that's happening now. It's exciting.
Dr. Mark Postles believes that it's a generational thing. Who we are today is based on at least 7 or 8 generations back, with intelligence, behaviour, and environment. What's your thoughts around that as to how we can help change future generations? Are you as simple as us and our message of just getting back to real food, or is?
Yeah, I think I am, and I can see that from my reading, and I'm not a nutritionist, and I'm not an expert in paleo diets or anything, or hunters and gatherers
Honey, you
diets.
could say anything right now, and you had us at hello.
But I can honestly see that the hunter and lean meat, fruit and veggies, nuts and berries, fantastic. I mean, I think the problems we're having is all of the processed foods. I think that if you can eat a good, healthy diet of, like I just said, those particular foods, and, you can throw in the other foods from time to time, but I think it's all the processed foods. We've got chemical modification and all the different chemicals that are in the society, in the environment.
I haven't even talked to you yet about
we haven't talked about that, but hormonal response to different, environmental estrogens and things like that. But I think that a lot of the refined foods and a lot of the foods, and you just got to look, it's also not only that, it's actually, if you look at places where they put McDonald's outlets and things like that, they're always in low socioeconomic areas. If you look at LA, for example, there's a population in LA that has 19 different McDonald's stores within a block of its kind of radius, and it's all in a really low socioeconomic area because it's cheap. And the closest supermarket is 19 miles away, and they basically, the supermarkets moved out of those places for fear of theft and things like that. Plus, they weren't selling their produce there because people couldn't afford it. And you look at places that are in lower socioeconomic areas, they don't have access to exercise equipment, regular bike tracks and things. So I think it's a huge problem. That's not only food related, but it's also it's behaviour, it's psychological, it's the way we live our lives now. Everyone's working 2 jobs to pay mortgages. It's the advertising. You see it on television all the time. Burgers this big and full of, from different.
And they're putting addictive substances into the food now, so it's not a fair fight, really.
No, it's. So I think it's a lot of things, and so I think if you can maintain the hunter and gatherer kind of style of eating, it's definitely going to be healthier for you, and that's the way my parents used to eat. I remember Mum and Dad, when we were growing up as kids, we had meat and vegetables and fruit. We never had things like really lollies or anything. Lollies were a treat if you really had a lolly every now and again. But there was processed foods, of course, when Mum and Dad were growing up as well. But it was all about meat and veggies and
but the issue with if all of us do the hunter-gatherer, if we do that, we can't sustain a planet of 7 billion people.
No.
So we're in a real quandary at this point because we know that health and probably metabolic disease is a result of the agricultural revolution, but more so in the last 30 years and in what's changed. So... I don't want anybody to tell anybody else what they know about the hunter-gatherers because otherwise the whole of the population will change, and which it won't. But this is the dilemma I think we are in.
Then there's the vegan option. Just saying.
Yes, because
that may not sustain the planet either if it's not grain orientated and things like that. So,
but 80% of the grain produced is for our livestock.
Yeah.
So a lot of the land that's being consumed now to grow the grain is not for human consumption; it's for the livestock. So there's a whole debate around that, and that we've got people starving, yet we're putting livestock. We're feeding the grains to the livestock, which is then creating enormous carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So that the whole cycle of that is just it's debilitating from a planetary point of view.
Yeah.
Whereas if we took that grain and gave it to the people who were starving, then there's another option, and then we wouldn't have the carbon footprint with the
It's true, and that's a classic example of the West and the East. One side of the globe we're in gluttony, and the other side we're starving, and it's just not getting through. The resources aren't getting to the countries that really need the food. We don't need a supersize, soft. We don't need fries with that. You don't need to eat that much food. And I think that's the problem. People are just addicted to food.
Overconsumption, I think, and you see it everywhere. It's not even just. Of course, food's the biggest place where we see it playing out, but overconsumption in every aspect. Especially, I see it especially in the States. Yeah. And I also see it in Sydney, and I see it in Melbourne a little bit. I don't see it so much up here where we are, but overconsumption in the context of everything. Consumption in our clothes and our shoes, and I'm guilty of that myself.
Yes, how did we go on No Spend February?
I put a pair of shoes.
She's wearing the shoes now.
She bought a no spend
February on my credit card because I was paid off
in March. Actually, this is really interesting because sitting across from you is a minimalist. So would you like to talk about your lifestyle as a minimalist?
So
you'll be very interested in this one, Karen.
Go, tell me.
So Cyndi sort of picked it up, I think, the other day because I couldn't work the iPad or the iPad, and she said, "Oh, you're really up on your technology, aren't you, Steve?" Because I couldn't get back.
He could work a major, incredible electrobiometric.
I know. Cracks me
microscope.
up. Just crack me up. He keeps going to the wrong button. I'm going, oh, freak.
So it's true. I try to because I'm really interested in environmental science. I'm interested in coastal systems, and I have a degree in environmental science as well, and I sort of published in the area.
Have you got kids?
No.
Yeah, no wonder.
No wonder. So I'm kind of interested in our global footprint, and I am, and so I try to practice what I preach. I recycle. I do everything right, but I'm a little bit of a minimalist. So
what does that mean?
I mean, I try not to buy things I don't need. So I only buy
tell them
things
how
I
long it
really
takes you
need.
to move. This is what house, home. Him and Sue. I said, he was moving house, and I said to him, well, that must have taken you the whole weekend. He said, no, just an hour or two, I think.
Took 2 hours.
Took 2 hours to
15
move.
boxes. That's all we have, 15 boxes of stuff.
I love you already.
Yeah, 15 boxes. Because we just move into a furnished place and we just carry 15 boxes and, it's good. I like it. I mean, it's just, I think it's good to practice it because
do you ever declutter? How do you declutter? Declutter 15 boxes. Is that ever an issue
Yeah,
for
we
you?
do declutter.
Yeah, I did.
Sometimes it gets down to 10, but then it adds up. We never get above 15, really. But it's things like books and stuff I buy, but I always give them to St. Vinny's or something after I'm finished with them. But, yeah, I try to live that lifestyle because I think it's good for the environment. And just buying things we don't need. I went to China recently to a conference last year as well, and I went through one of the areas in China. There was a big marketplace, and it shocked me beyond belief because there was so many knickknacks and electronics and things that we buy that we don't really need. That we're paying for to be sent all across the world to America and Australia for things we don't need. The big picture frames with fake paintings, and they're just thousands of them. And I'm looking at them thinking, this is crazy. We don't need that stuff. So I was kind of shocked with that. So that's why I became a minimalist. I've been practicing it for quite a while.
Do you think that that's the way to? Because there's not a lot of education out there about that right now, and there's a lot of people who are environmentalists. I'm the same, and I'm working on it because as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more and more aware of the impact that I have and the footprint that I leave, and that's not something that I want to go to the end of my days and look back because that, like you said, that's actually important to me. Yeah. And also, I like to consider myself a humanitarian. So I think that there's not a lot of people actually talking about that to the extent that we are educated about it.
Did you wake up at 8 years of age and go, I can see me with a PhD and a minimalist.
And a minimal. I mean, what made Steve Myers?
It's really funny you say that because I always bring up the fact that I had a Lab 4 chemistry set when I was a kid, and Mum used to buy me wildlife magazines as they came out from the newsagents every month. So I always had an interest in science, and it's the subject that I did the best in at school, and I loved it from word go. I loved nature, and that's why I wanted to be a marine biologist. I think living on the coast, everyone wants to be a marine biologist. Yeah. Then I realised that, it's probably a better move that I didn't because there's no work in... I mean, great job if you could get it, but it's pretty hard. Funding to marine biology is just, non-existent, basically.
Which surprises me because, when I interviewed Jack Cruz, and Jack Cruz said that the heartbeat of Australia is the Barrier Reef, and what happens to the Barrier Reef will happen to Australia. Yeah,
that's a good point, and the research. So marine biologists have moved into a new discipline now where they're environmental scientists. The money is getting filtered into climate change, environmental science. So it's under a huge umbrella. And then that gets sort of divvied out into marine biology and so forth. And you're right, the Great Barrier Reef falls under under the jurisdiction of social science. It falls under environmental science, under political science. Because it's a whole... So that's where a lot of the money gets filtered.
Do you believe that this whole the term climate change, is it a media thing or is it for real, do you think?
I think that's a good question. I think, that we are probably changing the environment we live in. We can see that we're destroying the environment. In terms of whether we're contributing to global warming, that's very debatable. But I think, we're actually destroying the earth by cutting down trees, we're buying things we don't need, we're polluting places, river systems, our food systems and things like that. So I think that's accumulative. I think eventually something has to give. And I think it is our climate and our environment that is giving now, and it's sending us a warning. It's whether I'm a climate change skeptic or not, I believe that we are under some sort of environmental change, whether it's due to CO2 levels or not. It's still debatable. There's two sides. I kind of sit on the side that, I think that we are, just from what I've read. That,
and you can see it. You can see it with our oceans rising. You can see it with the way that our weather patterns are changing. And I think... And again, this is more kind of on a vitalistic approach, but I think you can also see it. I think it affects us as the humans, because we're one and the same, and we're all
animals, aren't we?
And we're all breathing the same air. We're all connecting into the same environment. So I think it has a universal effect on all of us.
And you can see it in the ocean systems. The acidity from the CO2, and in the shells that on shellfish. The little creatures that live in the ocean, but their shells are getting thinner and thinner because they can't carbonate their shell anymore because of the fact that it's quite acidic.
Yeah, I read that in a blog a couple of months ago.
So we can see that things are happening.
Do you know much about chemtrails?
Chemtrails from snow. You mean chemtrails from...
Chemtrails. There's condensation trails that come out of the back of planes.
Oh,
and
okay,
chemtrails.
I don't know. No, I don't. No.
Can you do some research on that?
I'll let you know next week.
Can we have a chat about that?
Yeah.
Because I've been travelling a lot, and the girls have been travelling a lot, and everywhere I've been, I've seen the planes doing zigzags backwards and forwards all day until the sky is completely covered with this white mist. And I put it on Facebook, and I said, "What is that?" Because I was just curious. I thought it's just one giant antibiotic. I know it. And Matt and I were having quite a debate about it. So I popped it on Facebook, and then there was this huge debate on Facebook. People saying, no, it's just condensation. And others saying, no, there's published information that it's chemicals, that the government's putting chemicals up in the air, either to alter the weather or to change the something or other up there. Yeah. And of course that comes down onto us. And they showed the difference when I did my own research on it. There's a difference between a contrail, because the condensation trail disappears relatively quickly, whereas the chemical trail is there most of the day.
And it was there most of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some studies that they were thinking, I don't know whether they did it, but they were going to shoot sulfur particles into the atmosphere to reflect the light. To cool our planet a bit. That was one of the other things.
The last one that I read had something to do.
Big Brother. Yeah, I know. Who's they? That's what I want to know. Because they always say they, and I go, well, who are they?
Big global environmental scientists and stuff like that. That
how do they
climate scientists.
Well, it's backed by our governments.
It's backed by government funding,
and it's to change weather patterns, to get rain to fall. Because I watched. There was when you put that up there, I went, oh, I don't know anything about that, so I went online and had a look at a trailer, not a chemtrail, but a trailer, for a movie that's out about the chemtrails. And I was watching these scientists, and they were talking about that they are doing this.
They are. There was some studies done in the 1970s, huge studies in the South Pacific Ocean, where they actually looked at the Great South Pacific Ocean, where they looked at dumping massive tons of ammonia, which promoted algae growth, to actually draw in CO2 from the atmosphere as a sink pool. And it wasn't really very effective. It was very minimal, the amount that they actually drew in. So since then that work's kind of stopped. I don't know whether they're continuing with that, but they are doing that kind of work.
Yeah, there was an article that I read, and it had an outline of all the different chemicals that were in there. And I just chose one, boron. To have a look at it and what the effects of that are on humans and all that sort of stuff. I can't quite remember all the detail of it now, but it was enough to rattle my cage a bit.
Yeah. Okay, there's a really good point. How the heck do you remember everything?
I don't know, I just read a lot.
He does. Because
but I read a lot. It goes in one ear and out the other.
one eye, in one eye and out the other eye.
I listen to my books. I don't even read them. I listen to them.
I know when I ask Steve a question.
Not shy.
When I
I'm
ask
serious. It's just scaring me how much you know.
But when I ask Steve a question,
Are they?
My sister's doing astrophysics, for goodness sake. I know, and some people are just wired that way.
What question did you ask him?
I ask him questions all the time because I don't understand something and I want it part of perhaps the education program, and so I'll ask a question. Or he heard me on the phone the other day. This is really interesting. So we have offices together, and we have a person with type 1 diabetes who does the 4-phase fat elimination protocol. While she's on the 4-phase fat elimination protocol, which is the hunter-gatherer, lean meats, berries, and greens, basically. That's all she's on, but no nuts and seeds. So while she's on it, her insulin levels are really... She doesn't have to put as much insulin into her body. So she's got them down quite a few units. As soon as she goes off the protocol and starts to eat fat again, her insulin is up and down and her blood sugar's up and down. And anyway, so... She was asking, was it perhaps the HCG that was creating the issue? And she was wondering if it was HCG that was actually helping her through her blood sugar. And so I rang somebody that may be able to help me with it, and he said, well, she can take it if she'd like, and we can see if it does help. And then as soon as I hang up from the phone, Steve arrives with this piece of paper on what could be affecting this woman's her sugar levels in her blood.
Wow.
And let's talk about it, because I think that was a defining moment for me in my understanding of it's just not black and white. And I know it's not always black and white, but what it basically is something that I had no idea about. So he puts this piece of paper on my desk. So tell us about that piece of paper on the desk.
Yeah, well...
about what could be causing this problem.
Yeah, so there's been quite a lot of... So the idea was that this particular lady with type 1 diabetes, she was on the...
She's on the protocol, and then she added fat to her diet.
And she added fat to the diet, and she was realising that once she added fat to the diet, she was requiring more insulin. When she didn't have a fat in the diet, she didn't require as much insulin. But there's been studies for the last 2 decades and even more, but they're becoming more increasing now that fat has a role in promoting insulin resistance. So what's happening is and it's fairly well known that if you do eat a high fat diet, your chances of becoming insulin resistant are quite strong. They know that in studies with mice, if you feed mice a high fat diet for a week, they become insulin resistant. So the idea that she's eating a lot of more fat in her diet and the increase in the insulin that she's using sort of makes sense from that perspective.
So but
it was a particular type of diet. It was a particular type of fat.
So it was mainly the saturated fats that she had. Polyunsaturated fats don't appear to have that same effect.
Which is in what?
Well, some of your oils
nuts and seeds
and things like that. But the saturated fats that you find in meats and things like that, they're the kind of fats that were having that insulin inhibiting effect.
Coconut oil is a saturated fat.
Coconut oil is high in saturated fat, yes.
So you're saying maybe we shouldn't be having
No. So then we had this conversation. So I said, well, saturated fat is a fat that we have eaten for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So there must be an evolutionary reason why saturated fat causes the insulin receptors to dull down, basically. Yeah. So there's got to be some sort of evolutionary purpose. So we were going backwards and forwards. It was quite interesting, backwards and forwards. Finally, Steve pulls up heaps of papers, and you went home and you studied, didn't you?
I studied a bit about it.
Don't you love it? Spoke to Sue about it.
Over a glass of wine.
Without too much.
Yeah. But it appears like there's a couple of theories based on the fact that we've evolved. We had insulin resistance through, our hunters and gatherers times because it was due to the famine and feast. So there was times when we needed to maintain a fat supply. Because insulin, when you actually secrete insulin, it promotes fat basically to be taken up by your cells in your body. So But the whole idea of insulin resistance was something that is even interesting itself. So why would you want to be insulin resistant?
Yeah.
Why would you want to have sort of sugars floating around your bloodstream? So then I thought about that in the context of maybe it's a tissue-specific thing, meaning that one tissue is insulin resistant, the others are not. And so doing a bit of research, and it seems to be that is true.
So skeletal tissue.
Skeletal tissue is the major glucose uptake tissue. It requires so much. So in one context, it could be that it's insulin resistant in one particular tissue, and not insulin resistant in another tissue. So you're moving your sugars around into certain tissues for an evolutionary advantage. The other one that was really interesting was what's called the soldier to the diplomat. And the soldier to the diplomat is interesting because they hypothesised that insulin resistance creates more blood glucose to the brain. Therefore, higher brain sort of cognitive ability, therefore more cognitive ability, more leadership roles, more gathering of resources, because you have better control of resources as a leader than you would as a fighter. So the soldier to the diplomat is something and that's another reason why we see a lot of obesity through the centuries as being kind of the elite. You know, if you were obese, you were high up in that particular hierarchy of caste or wherever it may be. So this whole idea of the soldier to the diplomat is a theory based on gathering resources to your own benefit, or having better control over your resources by using your cognitive abilities over your fighting skills. And so it goes on and on. There's hundreds of papers on this, and it's quite interesting. So and I agree with Cyndi, and Cyndi made me think about this. She always goes back to evolution. I'm reading this great book at the moment about sugar and leptin and type 2 diabetes and obesity.
Fat Chance,
and Fat Chance. It's fantastic. It's one of the best books I've read. But
by?
It's by...
I'll look.
I have it here. I downloaded it, Steve.
And it's really good. I never look at the author. I just read the book.
I know our listeners will go. Oh,
yeah, they'll want to know.
It is a fantastic. It explains things so simply, but this particular author, and his name is
Dr. Robert Lustig. Lustig. Fat Chance.
Funny name again.
Yeah.
Another genius.
Robert Lustig.
A lusty fig.
He says in his book that to understand things, we must always go back to why did this occur in evolution? Because when you think about why we have insulin resistance, why we have leptin resistance, there must have been an evolutionary advantage for it, possibly. So he goes back in this book. He really goes back to the benefits. What were those particular advantages that we would have had a particular sort of example, leptin resistance. He talks about leptin resistance and what would have been the advantage of that through evolutionary time. So that's something I never really thought about, and Cyndi sort of educated me on that, because I never thought about, when I'm doing science, I think about molecules and diseases. I never think about the evolutionary context.
How cool!
But I do now.
Yeah.
And I enjoy evolution anyway, in terms of
and
how
what
we've evolved.
was the discovery around that leptin then? That leptin resistance.
The insulin resistance?
Or when you were saying from an evolutionary, why did we have to have that? Why did leptin resistance or insulin resistance occur? Or how and why, and what was the benefit of it?
Yeah, I mean, so what he's talking about now in the chapter that I'm up to, chapter 4, I think, or 5, is that, the whole idea of insulin basically inhibiting the sensitivity of leptin on the hypothalamus and the evolutionary processes for that. And again, it comes down to it's all theory based, but it goes back to that, as I was saying, the soldier to the diplomat, having greater weight, for example, which was seen as a good thing.
I'm thinking King Henry VIII.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, and also having more sugar to the brain, which is supposed to have given us greater cognitive ability and giving us that kind of hierarchical sort of prestige, I suppose, or status in society. And so there's a few theories.
Do you know there's still that in the islands, where in some of the Pacific Islands,
Nauru is
where they actually, if their wife is big, it shows that the man can provide. So a lot of it,
that's
there's
true.
There's cultural beliefs
well.
and things like that, which I guess is coming from things like that. But
so
I'm just wondering if leptin. So just help me again, because I'm not. So leptin is was released to tell us we're full.
Yeah, so
right?
leptin's basically secreted from your fat cells, from your adipocytes.
Why would that have been important back in times where food was so scarce? Is that why it was important?
So when food was, that's debatable as well.
Okay.
So if you look at the literature on, there's certain, as I was talking earlier about different ecoclimates, there's evidence that a lot of our hunters and gatherers that lived in certain climates had access to food 24/7 basically. Then there's other climates where they didn't have, that was through famine and feast. And that's the whole idea of the thrifty genome, which probably won't go into.
Of course.
But so that's kind of, there's evidence that we did have access to food, and we didn't have access to food in some contexts. So how's the thrifty genome then travelled through evolution if we come from different ecoclimates? So it's quite confusing. There's a lot of...
And would those genes still be switched on in Aboriginal cultures and indigenous cultures? Or
the thrifty genome is, it really came from the Israeli sand rat. Have you ever heard of the Israeli sand rat?
Yeah, actually I was reading that, no. No.
The Israeli sand rat, which is not really...
I'm feeling really dumb.
No. It's not really a rat. It's actually it's Israeli sand rat. It's actually not a rat. It's like a guinea pig, I think, something like that. And the studies based on that is because it goes through famine and feast now, today. It does it. So the idea is when you take one of those rats and put it into a laboratory space, or even in its own environment, and you feed it high-fat food, it balloons. It gets fat really quickly. So that's the idea of the thrifty genome. That was kind of one of the first studies. Neil, actually, NEEL, discovered the thrifty genome back in the 50s, and that's when they started looking at that Israeli sand rat because of its ability, because it knew it went through famine and feast all the time.
Interesting, that's when Dr. Simeon created the HCG protocol in the 50s. Did you have any more questions around that? Because I wanted to go to the lab.
Look, I just want to go back to the whole thing about the saturated fat and then us questioning why. Because saturated fat is a fat that's been in the diet for thousands of years or millions of years.
Yeah.
And what I think happens is that science looks down the barrel of a microscope and goes, saturated fat is causing leptin resistance, therefore it's bad. Or saturated fat is causing heart disease, therefore it's bad. But it has its place in diet.
Sure.
And that's where I think if everyone listening realises that when they declare that salt's bad for us, and you just talked about the whole thing, the whole water and salt as we go away from the equator. Of course we're going to need more in the hotter regions than we are in the cooler regions. So to say that salt's not good for us, sugar's not good for us, fat's not good for us, to me, the more we talk, Steve, the more I realise is that I now understand why they declare this. Whereas it's not correct. We do need it, and there are reasons why we need it.
Yeah.
And maybe we can learn to manipulate when we consume them, when we don't consume them, when we need that, soldier to the diplomat. Because there are times when we need brawn and there are times when we need to be a diplomat. But do we want to know it that far that we can manipulate each day? Because people can't even have control over whether they eat dairy or they don't eat dairy because they're so addicted to it.
Yeah.
But I still think knowing this, especially for someone with type 1 diabetes, and her not understanding, because she's not eating any carbs, and that's where the problem is, but having that understanding that polyunsaturated fats would be a better fat for her to eat in the situation she's in, as opposed to saturated fat. Whereas somebody who doesn't have type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes, they could probably, moderate their saturated fats and their polyunsaturated fats, and they'll be fine with that.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think, and as you said, I think it's context. Depends on the context.
It is.
And as Cyndi said, fats are really important in our system. They help us make cholesterol. They're part of our cell membranes.
I was going to say to you, looking at it on a cellular level, isn't fat making up the whole membrane? Doesn't it make up part of it?
So it's a lipid bilayer. It's phospholipids. So it's actually the whole membrane of our cells is basically phospholipids, which are fats. They're important in energy You know, we need to store fat for energy, for times of famine and feast and things like that. We need to store fat anyway, as we do now, for times when we need it. You know, we pull out fat reserves when we need them for
Pregnancy,
energy.
giving
exactly,
birth,
yeah.
breastfeeding.
Cholesterol's a derivative of fat that's really important in signalling, cell signalling, and other things. It's makes up part of the cell membrane and holds it within a sort of dynamic structure. So, fats are very important in our diet.
I think the lesson or the message I'm getting from both of you is there's just not one answer for all.
No.
And each one of us needs to do our own research and our own testing, because based on our epigenetics and our 7 to 8 generations going back will depend on how we react in this day and age.
Sure.
I just wanted to... Oh, sorry.
I just want people to know, though, is that while... Steve does all this research and we're always bantering with each other.
Nice to see you found your match.
Yeah, it's good fun. It's really good fun. In the office, I actually, if I'm questioning something, I don't have to just go crazy and try and figure out what happened. I just go ask Steve now. I just say, what's this? What's happening here? Now I forgot what I was going to say before the match.
Interesting about each of us individually.
Yeah. Oh, so while we're doing all of this, it can become quite complicated for the layperson. So to do this and to teach people this, but for a layperson's perspective.
That's right.
But also for the medical doctor or the chiropractor, they need to know this information too, or the primary care practitioner. But for the layperson, it's just to have an understanding of it. So to go into as much depth as what Steve goes into it, that's not important for the layperson. What the layperson needs to know is that if you are insulin resistant or you have issues with diabetes, then perhaps you should lower the amount of saturated fat, which is coconut oil and butter and things like that. And you should eat more of your polyunsaturated, which is inchi. So I don't want people to think that they have to become scientists to be healthy and well. They don't have to be. We'll do the research for them. We'll give it to them. The more they want, that will be there. So the education program is not to complicate things, but to make an understanding so that they won't be swayed by the latest diet, the latest information, the latest media release. And because a lot of media releases on science are really badly done. And then you read the headline and you go, oh my gosh. So we were talking about one just recently, and it was a study that was done last year by Sydney University. And the study basically said the fatter you are, the longer you live.
I saw that.
Yeah. That was it said that, and it was all based on rats and mice. And so what I got Sheridan to do, which is somebody that's also working with Steve and who's a nutritionist, I said, look, can you just ring the university, because it wasn't in the research paper. Can you ring the university and can you find out what these rats were eating? And it was all manipulated food. It wasn't their real food diet. So they'd manipulated the protein, they manipulated the starch, they manipulated the fat. And then
do they have to give that information if you ring and ask for it?
Well, they will give it to you, yeah, if you ask for it. If it's not in the paper, then you ask for it. So that was one thing that we were having a conversation about. You had your perspective on it too, and like I've got while I'm remembering this one, so I also was questioning you about this fish oil.
Oh, yeah.
This fish oil, and I had to ring the manufacturer and ask about this fish oil. And she wouldn't give me the formulation of the fish oil. So I told Steve this. So please tell what you did to find out if you could figure out how they made this fish oil. That colour, you should have smelt it. It was so artificial and it was coloured and it was in little fish form and it tasted like crap. We even tasted it, didn't we?
Yeah, it was horrible.
But this blew me away, what you did.
Yeah, so you mean I searched the patent database? Yeah. So I searched the patent databases. In Australia, every country has, America has one, but Australia has a patent database where you can search for all the patents, and you have free access to all the patents, and you can see what all the ingredients are. But
I didn't know you could do this.
Yeah, because they have to have them on there for certain
criteria,
and other reasons. But I searched for it, and the only thing I found was it was Nature's. Can I say?
You can say it, yeah.
It was Nature's Way, and they had this Kids Smart fish oil, which were preservative-free and flavour.
What was it? No artificial flavours, no artificial. Yeah.
And they came in this little sort of fish-looking rubber thing, which is really rubbery on the outside. I don't know how you could sort of digest that, whatever it was.
Phthalates, no doubt. Plasticizers.
Yeah, and then so I looked and I couldn't find. The only thing I found a study. They didn't have a patent on it at all that I could see. So I think what they're doing is they have a secret formula that goes in there that they haven't patented.
But they don't want anyone else to know.
They don't want anyone to know.
Until they do patent it.
Until they do patent it. But there was a study that showed how much of the fatty acids were in there and whether they were actually the right amount that they claim that was on their bottle. And it was true. It was the right amount, so that was fine. But just going back on that, which is really interesting, I'm doing this work on supplements at the moment, and it's amazing what I'm finding in the supplements, all of these studies, and unfortunately the literature is increasing with this kind of work, that there was one supplement, they looked at something like 31 different US companies and got supplements from each different US company and tested them for lead, and only 10% of them passed the amount of lead that you're allowed to have sort of in the system. The rest were 90% were over. The other ones they found, and this is not this study, then there's another study that did something like 17 different supplements from all these different companies, found really high levels of doping agents in them, doping agents.
Wow.
So really high levels of a particular drug called I can't remember it exactly, but it has major effects on and the drug that was found the most was a supplement that was recommended for children and pregnant women, and they now know that particular drug is involved in all sorts of nasty things involved in pregnancy.
So causing fetal...
How is
that?
How is that not taken instantly off the market?
Well, I think it has. It probably will be now, but there's another study that I looked at, and percolate, which is actually found in jet fuel and other things, and that was found in really high levels in a lot of the supplements as well, and that has major effects on cognitive ability, on there's schizophrenia, there's
depression, be a whole lot of mental illness,
whole lot.
And we're feeding these to our kids,
so you can just see
that. But we're doing it nobly, thinking we're doing the right thing for our children.
You think you're buying a supplement off the shelf, and you're wondering. I suppose you've got to really think about. What are you buying?
And why are you buying it?
And what are the ingredients in it? And where does it come from? How is it made? Because
Steve, I give my children every day one of these.
Yeah.
See, and I'm just showing you my little green drink here. But theirs is a shot. But it's real food. It's Cyndi's. This is what I love about knowing someone like Cyndi, is using her probiotics, her super green food, and her colloidals, and her camu. You know, my kids know they can't walk out the door without having one of these. Now, I'm also not worried if some days we don't have it, because we have such a good diet. And in fact, they probably don't even really need this a lot of the time, but it's just getting them in the habit of supplement, because they're both highly active children, and they're constantly doing things. And I don't know sometimes what they're eating at school either. They are old enough now to choose their own things.
But I've always said that about my food supplements, because they're not supplements, they are actually food. But I've always said it about it. When you're eating, and your children don't do this, but when you're eating Wheat Bix and low-fat milk and bread and cheese sandwiches and lean cuisine and pasta and all of the foods that have not much nutrition in it, and you want to move across to where you're fermenting your foods and baking your own breads, if that's what you do, or making bone broths and things like that. So you want to go from there to there. It's a big leap. So what I see my supplements as is, let's slowly start to make the changes with these types of foods, which is your breakfast cereals and things like that, by adding these foods to it. But then by the time you've gotten to fermenting your own foods and growing your own foods, where you can go grab your greens, put it in your Thermomix or, whatever, and make your own green food drink. So that, I've always said that about those food supplements, and there's only a few of them. The rest is basically foods that we use in our cooking. And I do source them the best I can and as ethically as I can. And, we go to great extremes to get the best that we can. But this, this scares me, what you're talking about, Steve, because I had uncovered a lot of stuff, I felt, by ringing companies. But then you have then gone further into it. And I just keep thinking, well, it's happening in the supplement industry. it must be in the drug industry as well, because our drugs are made by the same people who are making our supplements. Yeah. It's all chemical companies, and so while we're finding contaminants in the supplements, and that blows me away, some of those contaminants.
Yeah.
We must also have those contaminants in drugs.
Definitely.
Oh, and let's go another step. It's in skincare.
Yeah.
You know, like it's an even more unregulated industry in the skincare industry. And we know that pharmaceuticals can be delivered via the skin.
Yeah.
We know that we can put these things onto the body and it's absorbed. What I wanted to ask you, 2 questions. From a laboratory point of view and as a scientist, how do you feel about how animals are tested?
Oh, what a good question.
That's a good question. How do I feel? Personally, I don't like it. I didn't, I did a lot of work on mice. When I was working at the University of Queensland, we made transgenic mice. So we made mice where we knocked out a particular gene in the embryo.
Do they look at you scared?
Well,
the embryo, do you think, is going to look at you scared?
No, the embryo doesn't. No, they went. Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's not funny, but it's So we knock out a gene in the embryo and we implant it back into the female.
Wow.
And then the pups are produced, and we screen them to see which one has the mutation that we've introduced and which one doesn't. So we have what we call wild type, which are the normal, and then we have the mutant form. And then we can test them side by side because they're from the same litter, so they're sort of siblings. And then, we put them on things such as high-fat diets and certain things and test them, and then we have to obviously kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I know you don't want to hear that, but...
Well, our beautiful Karen had to leave, and so I'm just asking this on behalf of her and all our animal lovers, because it is a really tricky one.
It is, it's really difficult.
And you're talking about mice, and I almost kind of sit there thinking, listening to you talk about mice, guinea pigs and rats... But then there's beagles, there's cats.
I think,
monkeys.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a really social problem, because it's all about our anthropocentric view of us as the top of the food chain. And I think that, we test these animals in the lab because we want to get better. We want to make drugs that help us survive and get better. So that's our anthropocentric view of life. Whereas we can discard animals at our whim, to actually produce a system that can keep us healthier and longer. But then if you look at it from the other point of view, if you look at such diseases such as schizophrenia, for example, we know that's a defect in the dopamine receptor, and no matter how many times you would sit down with a schizophrenic and talk to them about trying to help them through psychologically, you never will, because it's a problem with the dopamine receptor and they need a drug to target that dopamine receptor. That's all been tested in mice before it goes into human trials.
Mouse tell you about? You can talk to a mouse till you're blue in the face. They ain't going to look at you any differently.
How does it tell? Yeah. How do we tell whether it's
especially over a mental disease?
Yeah, I mean.
So you're looking at it biologically.
You can look at it biologically. So you can look at analytical responses in brain areas that are
so these little mice
are
pinned down with things all over.
Yeah, unfortunately they are. Yeah. So it depends on how you look at it. I mean, it depends on how you look at it.
Are we saying we have to do this in order to advance the human race?
Yeah, and see, that's the anthropocentric view of life. That
what makes us think we're ever any bigger and better than a beautiful
and so it's a really
organ.
it's a really philosophical question, and I don't know how to answer that really in any way, but through philosophical kind of talk.
Because it's the cruelty side of it that does my head in. Like from testing skincare products or shampoos, the eye irritant, they stick these drops into bunny rabbits' eyes until it makes them blind, and then they go, oh, it's at this level, it's blindness, so we need to... So that poor little rabbit has endured hell in order for us to go... And then even then, we then test it on a human, and it's not the same reaction as it is... To me, it's like, if we're going to test... Surely we should be testing on these jerks in prison that don't care about other people.
Oh, Kimmy!
I'm sorry.
No, Sue would agree with you there. Sue says, why not just nuke all them and just test them?
That's the problem. You stuff up in the world and you treat other human beings or people wrong, then you are going to be put onto science death row. And
Friedman did. Was that guy Friedman, the guy that tested that electric shock therapy on a lot of prisoners to see...
Well, I'm sorry, if you're not going to regard life, then why should we not I mean, I don't know, because then if I looked at a person, even if they were the worst person in the world, and I saw that terror in their eyes, see, I'm not a good farmer. I wouldn't be a good farmer, and I'm not probably a good scientist.
And see, it also transcends from the lab too, because if you look at the way meat is basically, the way we kill animals for our meat consumption. If you look at veal, for example, I know they've put a stop to it in a lot of countries, but still other countries you have a baby calf that's in an area that can't stand up, has to sit down all the time because they don't want them moving around, so the meat's tough. So they lay in their own filth, basically, and then they're killed for their meat.
Ripped away from their mother.
They're ripped away from their mother at birth. They're put in a little cage where they can't stand up ever because you don't want them moving around. So, I mean, and you just look at the...
See, then I go down the energetic path of you're now eating a piece of meat that's not been lovingly created. It was made lovingly in the beginning, maybe, from the beautiful way the body, the cow's or the animal's body has created it. Then we do that to it, and I mean, there's a beautiful ad on TV I'm loving at the moment, and it's got these celebrities holding chickens, saying, she's often put in a cage for this long, and it's about eating ethical eggs. Yeah. I think, why can't, people don't want to see. If you Google animal treatment or how to get leather on your car seat and things like that, it freaks me out. And also from a skincare perspective, I can't sell my products in China because I don't animal test. They will only have products that are tested on animals. And my friend that lives in China...
We're animals, you could say.
My friend testing it on China said, well, aren't the human beings animals? My question to you then from a skincare point of view, because I have a skincare company, is how do we, or what's your thoughts around chemicals on the skin, what happens to those chemicals in the body? My understanding is that there is no defence barrier on the skin, unlike the digestive system. It gets into the bloodstream. Some of the research papers I have been given and shows in cadavers that the liver and the kidneys in particular are loaded with things like parabens and DEA and PEGs and the propylene glycols and all that sort of thing. So what's your ethics or understanding on a biological point of view on how that's affecting us? Here we are lathering all these creams on us for anti-aging, and yet the side effects of half these creams are carcinogenic, behavioural problems, they've got cognitive behaviour problems. How do we make logic of that?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. There's chemicals that we put on our body do end up in our system, and they accumulate. And some of them are hard to get rid of, so they'll continually accumulate, and then they'll have
Then does that cause a mutagenic reaction in the cell?
They can target stretches of your DNA and cause mutations and things like that. So there's a whole range of things that can happen, but I think it goes beyond that. It's really I think it's a societal problem. We need all this stuff. People want the latest, the advertising that's there for all of the different marketing and of whether it's food or whether it's cosmetics, or you must have the next best look, you have to be this skinny. I think we're as consumers, we're just consuming everything that's thrown at us, and we don't stop to think on what it's doing. We want the latest of everything, And I think it's a problem that we really need to educate people at a level of basic understanding on what's going on, and that's really hard. I
think that's why we do what we do.
Is one of the hardest things, because you've got to get societal change, and how do you do that without pushing your bias on them?
Well, I mean, even with these young women, young men looking at images. So young men are looking at their sports stars who are eating Wheat Bix for breakfast, or they're told to drink this super energy drink, it's going to make them run faster. Or young women looking at women who aren't even the real image of them because they've been photoshopped. And so now these young women are looking at pictures in magazines and advertising saying, oh, I'd love to be like her, look like her, and yet she doesn't even look like that.
No, exactly. It's all airbrushed. And I think too with the cosmetic industry, not that I know anything about cosmetic industry, but I can imagine that it's so competitive with the different products. So everyone's trying to get the best next product out there, and so they treat, they basically use it and treat animals to see if there's any side effects, and they'll then say our product is more superior because it's been tested on blah 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 blah, and it has no side effects. It actually has these properties. So I think it's just this really competitive pool of everything in life, food, cosmetics, whatever it may be. That we're all just jumped on this sort of wagon, and there's a lot of us that think differently, which is good. But I think it's going to take a long time, and who knows what's going to happen in the future.
And you're saying a lot of us are thinking differently, but I think it's the people we associate with, and I think it's the people that you're drawn to.
Yeah.
So, we started this whole conversation around, how did you end up with changing habits?
Yeah.
So this is where the whole conversation started. And your role
2 hours later.
Yeah. And your role with changing habits. So, can we finish off with that story? Because, I'd love to hear, what prompted you to even...
Yes, we got up to you and Sue moving back to the coast.
We never finished that question.
Yes.
Yeah,
but this is the beautiful thing of being involved with three women and being a fly on the wall in our room.
Okay, yeah.
We did come back.
Okay, so...
We do eventually get back.
Yeah. So we moved... Okay, so we decided that we really wanted to come back to Queensland because, we're Queenslanders and we love the weather. And so we took a bit of a punt, and I said to Sue, it doesn't matter because I've got colleagues that I still collaborate with at University of Queensland. We do work from time to time. It's just more an intellectual collaboration where I might write a paragraph or something and for papers or whatever it is. And I said, and I contacted them before I came back, some people, and from the University of Sunshine Coast, I contacted some colleagues there, and they said, yeah, come and have a chat when you get back. So I went and had a chat with them when I got back, and I got a position out there at the University of Sunshine Coast teaching biochemistry, lecturing. It's only once every fortnight, but it would have went on to other things. And so I thought, I enjoy the university system, but I saw this ad in Seek about biomedical science.
Oh, really?
And I thought...
So did your ad say biomedical scientist?
Yeah, it did. It said must have biomedical...
What made you say that?
Because that's what I needed. I need someone to have the knowledge behind all the stuff that I do.
So it wasn't just around education. You would actually ask for a bit more specific.
Oh, yeah,
okay, great.
They wanted someone that could design and deliver courses, which I've done, and someone that was a biomedical scientist. So I saw that and thought, wow, this sounds really interesting.
And on the Sunshine Coast.
And it's on the coast. No, I was actually already back on the coast, so I was already here, and. So I contacted Sally, who is the, Sally, the consultancy.
Sally's, who does all of our recruiting.
And I had a chat, and she said, look, come and have a chat. So I had a chat to her about it and gave her my CV, and she told me a little bit about Cyndi, and I looked at Cindy's website, and I had a look at, the philosophy, and I agree with the philosophy as well.
Had you heard of her before?
I hadn't heard of Cyndi.
Not everybody knows.
No, she knows a lot of people.
Knew that she was a good friend of Kim Morrison.
But I knew,
you went, that's
all I needed to know.
And you'd heard that Karen Smith was quite funny.
Yeah.
Hilarious, actually.
Yeah, that's true. So instantly, so I applied for I had a look at Cindy's website, and I kind of didn't really understand what my role would be, so I spoke to Sally, and Sally was a little bit kind of... She's great, Sally, but she sort of didn't have much of an idea either. She had a bit of an idea. So I said to Sue, look, I'll go for the interview and I'll see, because I don't really know Cyndi, but I had actually read some stuff on Cyndi, so I was prepared.
He was very prepared.
And so I went along, and when I heard about it, and I thought, this sounds fantastic. And, I've been in universities for a long time, and this is just a breath of fresh air. And I say to Sue, I love my job.
John O'Donoghue, I don't know if you've heard of him, an amazing philosopher from Ireland who spent many, many years in university. He goes, for crimes I did not offend, crimes I did not do.
It's but and so I didn't know where this would take me. I honestly didn't know. I needed a job, but I didn't need a job. I love what I do, so it's not about the money. So I didn't really, I wanted a job, but I didn't really need a job straight away. I thought I could wait until a position comes up, and I was still conversing with people at University of Queensland. They said, look, Steve, something's coming up if you hang on. But I just thought, I'd have the interview with Cyndi and Howard and Obi, the dog, and Karen. And Obi sort of licked me and said, yep.
He's the one.
He's the one. So
I just love the way you got on his back to you, Steve.
Yeah, he got on his back.
Yeah, he got on his back.
It wasn't Cyndi.
Yeah.
Well, Howard.
Or Howie.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah, but
And how long
I'm
ago
happy.
was this?
I'm really. This was. I've only been there 5 weeks, so it hasn't been long.
So you've been indoctrinated, all right, haven't you?
Yeah, but I really love. And I'm not saying this because Cindy's in the room. I really love what I do. It's fantastic. And I love the people there. It's just so nice to
It's a beautiful energy.
It's just really...
refreshing?
Different. I like it, you know, and I still teach out at the university, so that keeps me in with the universities. I'm still involved in Federation University with students, so I'm still keeping up a bit of an academic sort of profile, which I think is important because of, you know, the work that I've done. I don't want to sort of let that all go to waste.
I think it's also good for changing habits to know that that's who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of our followers, and particularly Cyndi's and people that will be interested in doing the nutrition course, they're not just lay people. These people are quite educated.
Yeah, sure.
And we're finding even a lot of my customers are they're well informed. They're not just people sitting there going, oh, I don't know any of this.
Yeah.
Our listeners on this podcast are becoming much more educated and informed. So I think someone like you, I mean, I'm so excited. And I know Karen is, and I know when Cyndi told us about Mr. PhD, I think from our point of view, just the knowledge and things that we get to learn from someone like you, even if it's via Cyndi, and seeing her lit up. Like Cindy's been the pilgrimage, she's been the pioneer, and she's been our voice for so long. And I think for her to have someone like you that she can actually bounce off and not spend maybe 3 hours trying to find out something, she can come in and tell you all of a sudden, not only have you got the answer, or if you haven't got the answer, you probably know an even quicker way of getting there because she's not in that academic institution.
Sure. Yeah.
No, you're right, I'm not.
So I think which means it's giving her more time to the public, you know, which I think is such an amazing gift.
And the way I see, you know, the education program going, so at the moment, Steve's role is to do the whole program.
And a 1 year program.
It's a 12-month program, but you could probably do it in less, but that's the aim, is the 1 year program. But where I want to educate the primary care practitioner. I also want to educate, you know, the general public. But I think the primary care practitioner comes out of university with no knowledge of food, nutrition, what supplements. They just willy-nilly give supplements, or willy-nilly, you know, say eat margarine. So my aim is to get those people that are questioning and want to know a little bit more. And I feel unbelievable confidence in Steve that he will be able to educate these guys more than me. So I can be part of that education process. But when they want to know about the bloody glitter thing and the PPPS, you know, look, you know, I don't want to know that stuff. You know, I want to know about food and how it affects the body. So I see us as a lovely combination. And then, you know, Sheridan, our nutritionist, she's having fun with Steve at the moment, helping review a paper, which is great for her. And like you know me, I've always believed that people come into your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And I really believe, Steve, that you were the perfect candidate. And
thanks,
really the perfect candidate. And the more I work with you, the more I think you were even more than perfect. I don't know if you can get that. But I knew what I wanted, you know, and I put it out there that I needed this person. And to get somebody like you that will come into, you know, the private sector.
Now's the time to ask for a raise. I'm just saying.
Right, Kim Morrison. I think that's a really good time for stopping. Now's the time to ask for a raise.
Well, here's a new job. Our beautiful Karen has left the room.
Yes.
And she's left us in charge of finishing, which we've never done.
No, we've never done this.
70-odd podcasts we've never finished.
Really? Right.
Yeah, so, but I think we're really, we've been able to break this into 2 podcasts, and we really thank you for that, because your knowledge, I'm sure we could keep going. And in fact, if it's all right for you, I think we could ask, you know, when any of our listeners, if you have got some of these curly questions or something that you would really like us to talk about, then maybe we invite Steve back, or we at least ask him where to go for the information. So make sure you post your comments on our beautiful Facebook page, which is all the W's, facebook.com/up for a chat, of course, or thewellnesscouch.com/up for a chat. We always, and I can even say it more now, but we'll always ask for a 5-star rating. And I think after having our amazing Mr. PhD academic extraordinaire with every single letter after his name on here, then it's just totally raised the bar of our show. So we're just totally up for that. But I think definitely more importantly, join us here next week on Up for a Chat and become part of the ripple effect that's changing the world.
Hi, Hi, it's Damien Christoph here. It's less than 100 days until the Wellness Summit, and we are jumping out of our skins to be with you at Crown Melbourne on Saturday, August 16 and 17, 2014. If you want to take your summit experience to a whole new level, then I urge you to join us as a VIP. This year, we have 2 VIP levels, not just 1, 2. We have Gold and Platinum. Both include front row seats, DVD recordings of the event, goodies from our speakers, intimate VIP only time with the speakers, and massive vouchers which can be used on future Wellness Couch events and products. To take your summit experience to the next level, go to www.thewellnesssummit.com. But be quick, VIP spots are limited and they will sell out. See you at the summit.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavored to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.